This is the best of VOCM Open Line with Brian Callahan.
The leader of the official opposition, the MHA, Liberal MHA for Windsor Lake, John Hogan. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
It's been a time.
You sound busy already, Brian.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any less. So of course, I knew what I was in for. So there you go. There is so much, but look, specifically, we wanted to just touch on, of course, your private members bill and the federal government's news yesterday, the release of their initial intent anyway, the Digital Safety Act. And of course, this is all about the social media ban for kids under 16, chatbots. Oh my God, John. So look, we didn't grow up in this age. We didn't grow up with phones in our hands. We didn't, that wasn't our world, if you will. The federal government yesterday, Mark Miller, the minister, mentioned, these we're really in catch-up mode. There's no sugarcoating it here. The world really is in catch-up mode with all of this. Although there are other countries ahead of the game, at least when it comes to attempts to outright ban kids from under 16 from social media and that sort of thing. Is it realistic to believe that, we can actually have a blanket ban? And do you believe, the healthiest thing for kids?
Yeah, so no doubt in my mind it's the healthy thing and the right thing to do for kids. As you said, we didn't grow up with phones in our hands, and you can see it. I mean, I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. Even since they've been born, I can see how the internet's changed, and, they're on their tablets, and we try to control it as much as we can as parents. But, you can't watch your kids 24/7, and they're out in the real world. So I think governments have a duty to try and do what they can to protect children in our province and in our country. So I do think it's the right thing to do. Is it going to be easy to do? Just put a ban on things? No, of course not. That's not how things work. But I think when you heard Minister Miller say yesterday, enough is enough. We have to do something to protect our children. That's the right attitude. So let's take this step. Let's see what we can do. Work with the federal government. I'm encouraged that they took that step again yesterday to move towards some legislation on restricting dangerous social media for our kids. And if it's not going to be perfect, well, that's fine. We can continue to work and we continue to grow and see where we can continue to fill gaps. And it's always good to look at other countries like Australia, Norway, look what the province of Manitoba is doing. And I haven't heard any parents that disagree with this approach, by the way, across the province. I've heard from a lot of kids who are a bit worried about it.
Yeah.
But you know what? We grew up without social media, and most of us turned out okay. So I do think we're moving in the right direction, and I'm encouraged to see the federal Liberals take this step yesterday.
Yeah, there are many out there convinced that it could even have more devastating effects, just ripping it away from them. And we're not talking about digital in general. This is specific to social media and the harmful sites, of course. And it is early days, but it feels very much like yesterday's announcement was about the feds having to do something or say something and get out there and just reassure Canadians that they are on it. And as I said, social media is here to stay. Is there room, though, to focus? I mean, others are pushing more of education, awareness for kids, precautionary track, just because, again, blanket bans, I think we all agree, are tough, and technology is changing by the day, and they will find ways to get around it, whether it's the teens or the predators. People are saying, let's get up-to-date courses on this stuff in the curriculum even, at the earliest stages, elementary, junior high. Your thoughts?
Yeah, again, that's where I talk about, there's gaps. Not one piece of legislation is not going to fix everything. I mean, we have the criminal code for things that you mentioned, of course, but it doesn't mean people don't find a way around that. And you still have to educate kids about how to be safe. I think about the DARE program, to get kids aware of the dangers of drug and alcohol and things like that. We have that education, and we have criminal code that says people can't sell it to children. So you need all kinds of approaches for this sort of thing. But I think just saying, well, this might not work, it might not be the cure-all for everything, let's not do it, I don't think that's ever the right approach. I think you got to take all the steps you can, all the powers you have to protect kids in this case. And I think it's incumbent on government to make sure that we're there to protect our children and to help our parents as well. I mean, as you said, just taking the phones or the tablets out of, like, for example, my kids' hands, there's going to be a little bit of a disadvantage to them. That's how kids communicate. That's how kids see things and learn in classrooms. So that's not the right answer either. So, we need to get the dangers away from the phones and the tablets and protect kids that way. And work with, as you said, with schools. When we were in government last year, we took phones out of kids' hands while they're in school. And we've heard positive results from that. We've heard kids are learning better. They're more attentive. They're more focused. And it makes the job for teachers easier as well. They're not trying to teach kids who are not listening to them at the board. They don't even use chalkboards anymore, I guess, Brian. That's how old we're getting. But the kids aren't looking at their phones. They're listening to the teacher. They're listening to what they're supposed to. They're learning. So all those little things help, and we need a collective approach to these sort of problems.
Yeah, it's all smart boards these days. Whatever they want, they could put up on it.
I dated myself a little bit.
Well, I got a teenager in high school, so I get all the current jargon, if you will. And one thing you mentioned Australia. A lot of people cite Australia because they were one of the countries to first get out in front of this and try it. They've had very limited. I mean, the official research out of that has been very limited success or impact to date. They say like 80% of kids under 16 are still accessing the platforms that they're not supposed to, and they're left to do much of the enforcement work themselves. The face scanning stuff doesn't work as well. I think there's another report that says it's completely inconsistent with both the reach and effectiveness. So not only should we be emulating, but we should be taking lessons from those experiences.
So 100%. So you said 80% are skidding around.
Yeah.
So let's look at the 20% aren't. 20% of kids now don't have access to those negative parts of social media that they had, a year ago in Australia. So that's a good thing. Moving in the right direction. So how do you fix the 80%? Is it a technology issue? Is it an education issue? Is it a legislation issue to get that number up from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50? So I think you look at the positives, that it's moving in the right direction. You're learning what's not working, and you're trying to fix that. But you have to start somewhere, and we have to start protecting our kids now. I mean, if we wait another year or 2 years, we'll lose a generation of kids to this. As Minister Miller said yesterday, I couldn't agree more. Like, enough is enough. At what point do we say, social media and the internet has all the advantages it has for us and for society? I think we all recognize there's a lot of disadvantages as well. Not for just kids, by the way, for adults, for me and you. We probably both spend too much time on our phones. So let's look at what we can do to make sure we protect our children and the most vulnerable people in our province.
Yeah, I'm completely at the when I have to stage with that, and I'm always trying to set the example for my daughter as well. I always catch myself not to be the hypocrite in the room, right? Let's switch gears for a moment. I know your time is limited to a little thing called the Churchill Falls MOU. So there's a new oversight committee in place, just announced, including former clerk of the Executive Council Julia Mullally, Auditor General, and also was the chair of the former oversight committee for Muskrat Falls. Is there any value I know the obvious, pushback was, oh my God, all the people who were involved in Muskrat Falls. Is there any value to having that experience, right? What was done right or wrong, whatever it was. We can't look in the past, rearview mirror. Is there any value in having their experience? People who've been there before, saw the mistakes, testified. We all remember Ms. Mullally having to go back to Confederation Building and look for notes at the inquiry. I'll never forget that. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I won't forget that. I mean, that just showed that you said, we can learn from our past mistakes. And the inquiry shut down, and Justice LeBlanc was not, he wasn't sugarcoating it.
It was surreal, wasn't it? You were there, you had standing.
I hadn't really witnessed anything like that before in court or at the inquiry. It's a concern that I'm not so sure we're learning from the past, because we're bringing back individuals who had been there before on the disastrous Muskrat Falls decision. And we don't talk about the inquiry enough, but that inquiry did set a good blueprint for how to move forward. And when we think about the oversight panel, not about the individuals necessarily, although there is a concern that the people from the Muskrat Falls project are all back to do this new Churchill Falls, I guess, analysis or MOU or whatever it's going to look like or whatever it's going to be. But I don't see the expertise on this oversight panel being necessary for what we're doing next. I mean, the most important thing is if we're selling this power to Hydro-Quebec, we want to make sure we get the right price. I mean, that's what people have been complaining about since 1969. I don't see the energy market analysts on the oversight panel. I didn't see them on the review panel. And, of course, the bigger concern is there were people that gave evidence to the review panel. Not only do the public not know who they are, not only do the opposition not know who these people are, the Premier and the Minister said they don't know who these people are. So we have advice that's been given to the Premier about how to negotiate a new deal, what recommendations there are. We don't know where that information came from. So that's very concerning. And the concerns don't stop. That's the frustrating part with this. I mean, we heard in the media, I think through VOCM this week, that the Quebec Premier is saying she hopes to have a deal by July. Where did this come from? Why are we hearing these things from Quebec and through the media? We're not hearing it from our government. They hired Mr. Kennedy back in January, and we didn't hear about it till April or May that he had been hired to help with the negotiations. Well, where's the openness? Where's the transparency? And why is there so much secrecy? What's the problem with telling Newfoundlanders and Labradorians what the status is and what's happening?
Well, if you've been listening, I'm all over that. The promises of openness, transparency, letting us know what's going on at points. And, some people say, well, we're not going to be privy to all the negotiations. I don't want that. I'd like some pretty just plain answers. There was one thing that came up this week specific to the opposition again, when the Premier's mentioned, I guess it's the new mantra now, the new pushback of any critique. He said, the Liberals are attacking the people rather than, and this was the exact quote, engaging with the substance of the work. What does that mean?
Well, again, so he says the people. We don't know who the people are. Who are the people that gave the evidence? Who are the people that said this is the right price you should get when you negotiate with Hydro-Quebec? Who are the people that said you should only do a deal if it's a shorter contract? Who are the people that said you should only do a deal if we get transmission access and wheeling rights through Quebec? I don't know who the people are. So for the Premier to say we're attacking them, completely untrue, because we don't know who they are. And he doesn't know who they are, which is the scary thing. And when there are individuals involved, he says we are going after them. Well, why didn't he tell us that people were involved back in January when they were hired? Why hasn't he told Newfoundlanders and Labradorians what these people's mandates are in relation to the negotiations? So we're asking questions, and if you followed the House of Assembly, it was a very frustrating session because as we ask question after question after question on any issue, that is the kind of pushback we got. Refusal to answer, dodging the issues, and not really being the responsible government that they should be on all issues, in particular the Churchill Falls procedure and MOU. And
now there's the pressure of the S&P talking about stable to negative bond ratings, just because there doesn't seem to be much movement yet on the debt and the deficit. Were you surprised to hear that, and does that not bolster the case for getting this deal done?
No, I wasn't surprised. I sat through the budget debate. We asked questions and didn't get answers about the plans that the government had. We were very concerned that they had decided to do away with the Future Fund and not put non-renewable revenues from offshore oil into the Future Fund to grow for the future. We warned the finance minister that this could happen if he wasn't saving and thinking and growing that fund for future generations. And sure enough, it's not that we wanted to be right on this. We hope that they would see it as a good budget for the prospects of the future, the economy of our province. But, if you paid attention to what we were saying during the debate, this is not a surprise to us. I did see a comment this morning somewhere in the media that, does Quebec wake up this morning and say, well, now we have a little bit more leverage. Newfoundland and Labrador is in a bit more economic trouble again. They're going to need a deal. I hope that's not the case. I hope we continue to do negotiations with Quebec and they recognize that this needs to be a win-win for both provinces, which the old MOU was.
Right, with Quebec and apparently, and I'm still not clear on this either, to what extent Ottawa, to what extent they're inserting themselves into this conversation, and to what extent that changes the water on the beans as far as financial implications, power sharing implications, corridors, east-west, north-south. I just don't know. It's very murky on what role Ottawa is playing here and whether they could actually broker something.
Yeah, and I think Ottawa, it's clear to me, when I met with Prime Minister Carney while I was Premier, or even this week while I met with him in Ottawa, he's supportive of this deal, of course, and making sure that it gets done. We didn't have any conversations about Ottawa, what their plans are, nor should I be. I'm not privy to those negotiations. But I did say to him, if Ottawa is willing to step in and help on the deal to get it forward, move it forward, anything that the federal government decides to do for Quebec, they need to do at least that or more so for Newfoundland and Labrador. So hopefully if those negotiations are taking place to that extent, we need to get our fair share of support from the federal government.
John Hogan, I know we covered more than I thought we'd get through there today, so I really appreciate that this morning, especially with the House not...
Yeah, and thanks for continuing to talk about this issue about our kids, because it's very important we look after them. And as you know, you got one yourself. So
couple.
I think everyone's on board with this. Couple. So everyone's on board with this approach, and we just got to figure out how to do it right.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Let's go to line number one, and Des Sullivan of Uncle Gnarly blog fame. How are you?
I'm good, sir. I was very interested in what your initial guest, John Hogan, the leader of the opposition, had to say on the Churchill Falls MOU, and I naturally been keeping very close eye on what's been said in recent weeks, and I'm very happy to have this opportunity to talk to you today.
Yeah, so there's there's a larger group of you, that contribute to your blog, but specifically this group that's just been, the timing is interesting, of course, coming on news that there could be something in the offing regarding Quebec and Newfoundland as soon as the meetings in Charlottetown next month at the Premier's meeting. But your group's submission to the Independent Review Committee, the IRC, it's titled A Flawed MOU, A Better Path Forward, and you basically conclude that the agreement repeats most of the mistakes that have long been associated with the 69 contract and does not make Newfoundlanders, as the MOU IRC committee concluded, the chief and primary beneficiaries of our hydroelectric resources. That's the gist of it. What's the impetus, and do we kick this down the road at our peril?
Well, we would kick it down the road at our peril. There's no question about that. The submission that we made, there was a group of us, 5 people, made a 75-page document to the independent review panel, and the comments that we made and the analysis on that on the MOU basically aligns very much with what the IRP reported, and that's absolutely critical because I have to say, and I'm not interested in any, getting into any rows with John Hogan. I know John. We spent many hours at the Muskrat Falls inquiry together. He was at the front of the room. I was at the back room. But we were both there, and we both heard what went on. And in that context, the Churchill Falls MOU does not represent what the people of this province deserve from one of their greatest, most precious resources at Churchill Falls. And while I have a big problem with what I'm hearing these days from the VOCM government, I equally have a problem with what I hear from John, because John has this very difficult problem that his former boss, Premier Fury, negotiated this MOU. It was dropped into the public lap without any prior notice, any consultation as to how it should be comprised, what would represent our interests going forward, and so on. And it came out to be an incredibly deficient MOU. It effectively gave away the Churchill Falls project to Quebec a second time for another 51 years. Now, for me, as one citizen, that is not something that I would want to go on the airways and crow about. So John, my advice to John, quite frankly, is back up a little, assess what your government did with what the independent review panel is saying, and assess it too in the context of what Newfoundland owns at Churchill Falls. We have no obligation, right? We have no obligation to give away Churchill Falls to Quebec because they want to use a land border to impose a restriction on transmission. Either we are first-class citizens of Canada or we're second-class citizens, and I'm not happy with the latter. And I don't believe for one solitary second that our position should be that we're happy with being second-class citizens and therefore we'll take a second or third-class deal. Does that make sense to you?
It certainly makes sense. I guess the devil is in the details of the deal, I guess. And unfortunately, no matter what question we're given, if there's actually still a referendum question to be had, I just look at the issue, of course, Des, as you know, is the two balancing acts here, right? Do we delay it? Do we take what we can get? And we're in an urgent situation again, as we were in the past. I mean, Quebec was flush with cash in the late 60s, so they could, put all their eggs into that basket, and they had that negotiating power, and Brinko was up against a wall, as we know. In this situation, you're up kind of against the Force NL crowd, right? I mean, they will talk about the hundreds of billions of value for Newfoundlanders that's at risk, the tens of thousands of jobs that are at risk, the long-term security, sustainability of the province at risk, an equitable, stable future for both parties at risk. And Quebec wants a deal, we are hearing, and done by the Premier's meeting. So, look, I'll tell you what, I don't have, darn, I wish I had more time, but let me just ask you this one thing. I caught some of Gabe Gregory, he's one of the members in the group with you, one of the five, and I caught some comments yesterday. He mentioned, the importance and the value of the critical minerals and how important it is to get those projects going in Labrador, as valuable as every deposit is, which needs more power to power the mining. Yet, advises that delaying the deal...
There is that element. But you know something? The mining element can be well over exaggerated. The real money for Newfoundland is in the sale of power to whomever, as long as it is at market rates. This MOU became complicated, exceptionally complicated, because Quebec maintained its 1969 position that no, you have to sell power at the Quebec border. We will take it, and we will market it to points west or south to the U.S., and we will take the market rates, and you will take Newfoundland. You will take Newfoundland and Labrador, that is, the price that we are prepared to give you under duress. And I'm saying to the province, number one, we own 65.8% of Churchill Falls, which is one of the largest power generation projects in the world, and we own the water rights. So that is our strength. We are not in any great hurry, except if we want to be. We're in no rush to do this deal. The arguments made by Jennifer Williams that we're going to lose something if we hold out is absolutely balderdash. That is not how you negotiate. We spent, and I have lived most of that time watching this since 1969, where we said back then, okay, as this contract expires, we'll get leverage. And here we are today. Now that we have the leverage, we're saying, we need to do something right away because Quebec has the upper hand, or our indebtedness is so great that we have to do whatever is necessary. And I'm saying to the people of Newfoundland, as one citizen, that there is no part of the Churchill Falls MOU that is worth taking. Okay? We have a huge debt problem in Newfoundland, which can only be solved, I would suggest, only be solved by a proper deal on Churchill Falls. Yep. And if we are crazy enough to bend to the will of Quebec, if we're crazy enough to take 15 or 20% of a resource, when we should be getting 75% or more, because we have 65.8% of the shares in CFL Co, and we own the water rights. If we do that, we will consign ourselves to a very bad situation for decades to come. Now, I want to add one more thing.
I'm right. I've got it in my ear that I got to get off the break. I'm really sorry. We can make time again for another.
There's a lot more to be covered.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I hope that the public will zero in on this and that they will not let Premier Wakeham give away this Churchill Falls deal a second time. Don't let them do it. The province got to have a proper, equitable arrangement in relationship to what we own in that resource. We cannot let this go.
Des Sullivan, I really appreciate you making time for the program. We'll have more time. Anytime you want to call to continue this, I'm all up for it. Thank you.
Well, that will likely happen. Nice to talk to you, and good luck in the new position.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Let's go right to line number 3. As promised, Mark Bradbury, CEO of Easter Seals, you're on the air.
Hello, Brian. Thank you for having me on today.
You're very welcome. What's going on? As if we don't know.
Well, I'm sure everyone's heard, but I want to just give a little more detail and to really push people to see the virtual tour of this amazing Easter Seals Luxury Cabin Lottery that's underway right now. And it's a beautiful grand prize, or grandest cabin, yes, a stunning custom-designed waterfront chalet in Goose Pond Country Properties, valued at over $800,000. The cabin is fully built by Core Contracting and fully furnished and decorated by Cohen's Home Furnishings. But the big deal is that, and this is one I call for VOCM and their listeners, because they've been supporting us for so long, is that today's the deadline for the early bird prize, midnight tonight. And if you don't get your ticket before midnight tonight, you won't be in for this amazing, fully loaded 2026 Mazda CX-5 GT SUV from Steel Mazda, valued at over $50,000. It's already creating a lot of excitement around the campaign. It's an absolutely beautiful machine. And tickets are just $40. So you'll be in for this amazing chalet cabin, luxury cabin, and also be in for the early bird prize for the SUV and many other wonderful prizes, such as Wiseman sales with Yamaha Canada, the Grizzly Quad, and the Jet Blaster, and the trailer, and all kinds of other prizes, $10,000, a whole bunch of different prizes. So it's really important to get in there today and get your tickets. And they're just, as I said, I think $40. And, let's talk about what the proceeds go towards, which is very important. And that's the Easter Seals provide over 20 meaningful programs and services all across the province, not just the island, but in Labrador as well. And it's just huge because it provides accessible and inclusive sports, music, art, camps, career services. I mean, the list goes on. It's for all ages, all disabilities. But it's not just, it's not that they can't, people with disabilities, it's just that they do it differently. And Easter Seal really helps with that. There's wheelchair basketball, there's sledge hockey, bocce, swimming. Mm-hmm. The list goes on, but you got to get your, anyone knows what I'm about to say. You got to get your tickets today at cabinlottery.ca to be in for this amazing and see the virtual tour of the cabin.
Perfect. Mark, listen, I appreciate the time. Cabinlottery.ca, all of the information is there. You got 14 hours to the early bird deadline. Good luck with this.
Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate your time.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Let's go right to line number 2. And Donna, you're on the air.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good. How are you? How's the roads today?
Well, I got to tell you.
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't so much today as it was yesterday. First off, I want to say a big thank you to all the drivers that are going up and down Portugal Cove Road and using the zipper lane kind of technique. Yeah. Where it's like one and one. It's awesome. They're doing an amazing job.
That is good to hear.
I know, and they're even letting the buses in, and I mean, we're big buses. We take up like 2 or 3 car spaces, but they stop and they let us come through, and that's awesome. Awesome.
Oh, okay. Let's call out the good stuff while it's happening, because it's. I'm trying to keep it a positive here, but it can be a chore sometimes.
It can, and the thing with yesterday, I was over at the school where I pick up my high school students, and we have, it was almost like a roundabout. You got to go up, and they got a drop-off point where the kids could get dropped off, and then they just leave, which is great. You know, I mean, especially in weather and stuff for parents. But it's called drop-off. It's not called pickup. It's drop-off. So anyway, yesterday I was pulling up to pick up my high school students, and there's 4 buses that'll fit up in that roundabout, and that's the way it works. It was decided beginning of the year, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what we do. So anyway, there was a pickup truck up there, and the driver was sitting there, and I stayed at the bottom for a little bit just to let him know I got my indicator light on. I'm getting ready to come up, so you got to make a decision. And there was already a bus there, so the only way that he was going to get out was to back up and come down. He didn't do that. He went ahead. So then he's stuck. And he's starting to get really frustrated. He wanted these buses to move so that he can get out. And, like, the buses are turned off, and they're not going to turn back on until the kids are on the bus and we're getting ready to leave. So anyway, he's starting to get really erratic. And he's, like, shaking and waving his hands and stuff and going mad. And then he starts backing up. So I tooted the horn at him, and I was trying to give him a direction, like back up and come towards me, and you can get out. But he wasn't paying attention. You know, he was all in his head by that time. So then he goes right back down to that bus again. And at this point, I'm like, okay, this is your decision. I come down, and I'm behind him. And I could hear him. And he is cursing and swearing and going off his head.
Lovely.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, you're over by high school, and you're going off your head, you know. And what he did blew my mind. He drove up on the sidewalk. He drove. He made a left-hand turn right up on the sidewalk, went in between trees, went in between a telephone pole, fire hydrant, you know, and he wasn't, like, taking his time. He was, like, angry. And I got this on video, okay? Because as soon as I seen him doing that, I turned on the video on my phone, and I was like, okay. So, yeah, and he just held butt, went on down the street like nothing ever happened. So I called the RNC because, you know, obviously this is not legal. And, you know, I've been waiting for somebody to get back to me. Obviously, it's not a big issue for them, you know, but they're busy, you know. What can you do?
Yeah.
But, people should not be doing this. Like, you should have better sense. Seriously. You know, kids are getting out of high school. It's like opening the gates to a zoo. Kids are going mad. They're going everywhere, hopping on buses, running up and down streets, going to parents' vehicles and everything. You don't know where this kid's going to pop out. You don't know.
It's a total lack. It's a total lack of awareness and of where you are, what time of day you're there, who's around. I mean, look, people can't help themselves. Again, it's this every man, woman, and child for himself mentality. I'm going to get where I need to go, and damn the torpedoes. And it even speaks more volumes when you know there are cameras everywhere, but they don't stop to think, even to that extent. Oh, maybe I shouldn't because there could be consequences. It's just I'm doing it, and that's it. It's the same thing with the flick of the smoke out the window or the. Anyway.
Oh, God, don't even get me started on that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I'm glad. Just bringing this up, you know, they're talking about the $500,000 fines, $120,000 fines. I'd love to see how they're going to get that money. You know, are they going to put a lien on a person's house? Are they going to take their vehicles and stuff like they would if someone was poaching? Because, you know, all they're going to do is tack on a bill to somebody's account. You know?
The video that you have, do you say you sent it to the RNC, did you?
No, I'm waiting for somebody to actually call me back from the RNC.
Oh, okay.
I called them, and I told them what happened. They're like, well, you know, we'll have an RNC officer call you back. And I haven't heard from anyone yet. And, you know, like, the RNC has always sent out information like, please don't post anything until we contact you, and, you know, that kind of stuff. And I'll respect that 100%. But if somebody don't call me back, is going to go viral.
Yeah,
because
that's the issue, right? It's if you're not going to get a response, then that's why people do spontaneously do it, because they don't even expect that they will get a response or that it'll be followed up on or that there will even be consequences. Just because of the awareness out there that the justice system and the courts are blocked. And these can be time-consuming things. People want immediate gratification or consequence or results, so they post it up just to make sure everybody can rip the person. And to some extent, you can't blame them. Only, again, I would just say that, this is such an egregious act, the way you're describing it on school grounds, where clearly anyone could run behind you, next to you, in front of you, especially for kids. And look, there are rules there. There are rules on my daughter's parking lot, and they come out in the memo every week. Here are the hours you cannot be on that parking lot, and that here are the hours that the buses are there blocking it. And I've seen cars get stuck between two buses too because, they have family issues going on. They need to get in and out, and they might have an early pickup for their kid, and they just forget. Some people make mistakes. Others are there because they just don't give a damn. That's
right. And I was talking to the reception at the school yesterday, and I told her what happened, and she said the same thing you did, Brian. Is they're always sending out emails, they're always notifying people that the buses are going to be there at such a time and not to be in that roundabout because they will get stuck.
Yep.
I've had people up there. I had this one lady. I got to tell you this, Rocky. She's never reversed her whole life. I asked her, I said, can you back your back your car down? And she's like, I've never put my car in reverse. And I'm like, what?
But she has a license.
She had a license. So I said to her, would you mind if I move your car for you? And not a problem. So my bus was turned off and everything, and I moved her car so that she could actually get out. And she was an older lady. Maybe she has a roundabout in her driveway. I don't know. I don't know her circumstance, but she certainly didn't know how to back up. But for the sake of your children and for other people's children, for the drivers out there, use your common sense. I know it's rare, but you can plug into it periodically and just use it if you have to. Just stop being in your bubble. Think about what's around you. We have to. We absolutely have to. So
Donna,
I'm just hoping that.
Yeah. I was just going to say, look, I always appreciate your tales from the roads. We can use them all the time. So thanks again for the call. I got to get after the break, but this is a conversation. I really appreciate your regular calls. So keep her going.
And Brian, I want more bus drivers calling up because I'm not the only one that can tell this story. There's other drivers out there. If they can call up and spend a few minutes of their time, more power to them. Okay,
the call's been made. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, Brian.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Right to line number one. And Dan McTagg, Executive Director, President for Canadians for Affordable Energy. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
So, listen, thanks for making time for the program. A few people now in the last couple of weeks, this now in 3 months or so into the Iran war, have said, it's really strange. As bad as it's been, it doesn't seem to be getting any worse. The gas is kind of hovering around the same place. People run around saying that, it was going to go through the roof every week. But then, all the president of the United States has to do is say, I think we're going to have a deal in a day or two. Has that kind of optimism bubble burst? Is it done?
If it's not done because they're falling for the head fake, the reality is that sooner or later we're going to wind up with a lot less oil. We're working on reserves right now. Those reserves are about 40% depleted, so the strategic petroleum emergency supplies, many countries are wearing through that. The U.S. will hit really critical. We understand this. The U.S. has had about 700 million barrels. It drew that down a little bit a couple of years ago. About 500 million barrels. It's likely to hit about 300 million barrels in the salt mines in Louisiana. That's where they store the oil. When you hit that level, those salt mines can get in trouble. You wind up with contamination. The well liners break, etc. Mm-hmm. So the U.S. is about 4 weeks away from being able to say, "Hey, there's plenty of oil out there. We've got a lot." The world is being held together by emergency supplies of oil, and the hedge funds and all the traders in Wall Street are really rowing against the current here, because the reality is that the world is short about 1.6 billion barrels, and that's not going to be made up. Obviously, with what's happening today, yet another example of, we've had Trump come out, for the 14th time, saying that deals around the corner, wanted to bomb the snout out of them. So I don't know how this is going to go. I'll say that we are heading towards a real scarcity, a real shortage of oil that's going to happen over the course of the next 4 weeks.
How much oil are they still now importing from Venezuela after seizing those assets?
Well, they sent all that oil to India. India got 12 million barrels a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, they are getting oil to parts of the world that truly need it. But, I mean, Venezuela can only produce 1 million barrels a day, maybe a little bit more. Over time, it'll increase. We could do a lot more ourselves. We're near 5.5 million barrels here in Canada, of which we send 4 to 4.5 million barrels to the United States. That's, by the way, the only reason the United States can make a claim it's a net exporter of oil, because the reality is that they only produce 13 million barrels a day, 13.5, but they consume about 21 million barrels. That difference, 60-70% of it is coming from Canadian oil, without which they wouldn't be able to produce things like diesel to run your agriculture, your jets, your military.
And you talk about the reserves being, slowly but surely what everyone was hoarding back and holding on to in case of a rainy day, if you will, or raining something. On top of that, I see increasingly signs that more and more countries are open to taking Russian oil, finding ways to reduce those sanctions. And, despite, when push comes to shove, if they really need it, that Russian oil is also contributing artificially to the prices.
Well, yeah, I mean, Russian oil is now maxed out. What they call the ESPO oil is hitting $120 a barrel. So yeah, everyone's using it. Sanctions have been relieved. Have been released. There is no longer sanctions on Russian oil given the crisis by the United States. But that's not going to stop the problem we have.
Yeah, and now I see also, on all these, I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, and really people want to just hear what you think gas is going to do, and fuel and oil and everything else. But just the other thing that I noticed now, and this seemed only a matter of time, the Houthis now are getting involved in strikes and unpredictability in the Red Sea on the other side of Saudi. So that would take the other sort of, that other route for oil tankers out of the mix, or at least trepidatious and hesitation to go through.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia had the ability to send 3 or 4 million barrels via pipelines it's built for the past decade.
Yeah.
Those pipelines are now going to be threatened because the same problem. You have a choke point into the Gulf of Aden from where the Houthis can fire at any tanker coming across the Red Sea, or going the other way in through the Suez Canal. I mean, not many of them do; only smaller ships do. But this is just making a bad situation worse. And I think what's happened here is that the folks on Wall Street have not waken up. And here's the critical point. Unfortunately, it takes high prices to curb demand globally. These lower than expected prices are continuing to leave demand pretty much where it was, and that's just wearing supply down rather in a much faster fashion. But again, emergency supplies is what's kept the world going. Those emergency supplies literally dry up at the middle to end of July.
Yeah, so on that note, and on the gas prices, where do you see it going?
Well, I mean, today is probably the best day to fuel up. You're going to, you saw a bit of a decrease overnight, but I think you're going to see prices move up slowly but surely. We now see that President Trump is saying he's going to hit Iran even harder, and they're going to respond even harder. So I think the situation is now quickly going out of control. If he tries to seize this famous Karg Island, 90% of all Iranian oil goes through there, then I think there's really going to be a Donnybrook on a scale that will involve the rest of the world. That 4-week window that we have, maybe 5-week window we have, could close a lot sooner. I think the prices are likely to go up well above $2 a liter over the next 10 days. Here in Newfoundland, I also believe that diesel will move right back up to the $2.40 range, something we're very uncomfortable with. I guess one of the silver linings, it's not winter, but I can just say the word yet, because when that happens, furnace oil and other products are going to go through the roof as well, as we don't just deal with high prices, we deal with shortage, scarcity. It's a supply crunch.
Hey, may we live in interesting times or expensive times, whatever you want to say. Dan, I always appreciate the insight. Didn't want to, as I said, get too bogged down, but everybody appreciates, the prognostications and the dead-on estimates you normally have. So thanks very much for all of that.
Grateful for this, and have a great weekend when it gets here for all your listeners.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line with Brian Callahan.
Right to line number 2, and the Deputy Mayor of St. John's, Ron Ellsworth. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Brian. I understand you were looking for me yesterday.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, obviously there was a bit of a back and forth between yourself, I guess, without the councillor hat on. Is that fair to say?
You can say whichever way you want. I'm fine with it.
Well, I mean, I went to look for comment, and the city told me I had to go to you personally because you made it as as an individual as opposed to a councillor. So that's why I clarified that.
No problem.
Yeah. So, look, it was a back and forth between yourself and a former council candidate, Walter Harding, and it was, a lot of people saw the back and forth, and you made the point that this is not about the cost, it's about the issue, and I think it can be about both, but certainly we have issues, real serious issues that have to be addressed regarding respectful workplaces and the policies and all that sort of thing. In this case, Councillor Davis was suspended for a month for disrespectful behavior and creating a negative work environment. That's the quote from the release from the city. What can you tell me about it? I mean, you did, Councillor Davis didn't mention you, but you did come out and say that you were the one in the conversation with him. Can you at least speak to the nature of it? Like, was this a personal insult? Was it a difference of opinion? Was it the tone, or what?
So we got a lot to unpack here, Brian, we could this morning. So on the complaint, no, it was not a confrontation between myself and Councillor Davis. If you look at the copy of the redacted report that was released, you can see under the redactions there's 5 different issues that were reported to the city solicitor under the codes of conduct, respectful workplace, and toxic work environment. There's 5 different incidents that were reported in that place and time. These were not confrontations between myself and Councillor Davis. These were things that I had witnessed and was forced, I guess, because there was conversations with Councillor Davis. There was conversation in one meeting in particular where we were talking about a new group taking over a building, and he used a derogatory term to explain or define those people, and I took him to task in that meeting on that. So did several other councillors. There was other incidents. So to say that it was never approached with him is not correct. And I just felt that I need to lend my voice to those that were getting caught in this crossfire and continuous crossfire of disrespect and disrespectful comments that needed to be addressed. And therefore, I brought forward the complaint, I guess, with, for, and on behalf of all of those impacted.
What was the derogatory comment?
Because it's a private meeting, Brian, as you know, with the, here we go, right? So, to that,
here we go. Well, I don't understand what you mean by here we go.
No, for what I can share with you and what I'm able to give you, because of privilege, private, which frustrates me to no degree. As you know, I'm not much for hiding away behind stuff.
No, absolutely not.
I am working hard through the city's process to try and get as much of this report released unredacted as I can. And I'm working through 2 channels. One is I've made my own personal tip request to get the document, and then I intend on filing a complaint with the Privacy Commissioner's office that the city was too liberal in its redaction, to see if they agree. The other option is council can agree to release the unredacted agreement. And I have already had several councillors contact me to say that they are more than willing to have the unredacted document released.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that effort. I'm sure everybody does, because a well-informed public can make well-informed decisions.
100%, Brian, and this is why, this morning I'd like to have a little bit of clarity conversation, because some of the information that's been put out by Tom Davis needs some clarity. For example, he talks about that he was never spoken to about any sort of this behavior, never called into the mayor's office, city manager. He's right, he was never called in, but he was spoken to that. when he talks about it was a private conversation. Well, the conversation happened in our boardroom, in conference room A, just before council meeting started. There was 4 or 5 people to my right who were engaged in the conversation. And partway through the conversation, he involved himself in the conversation and then went down this path about this podcast and the issues around an individual podcaster, not the podcast itself, that was very offensive to several in the room, and that got pushed back. So it was not a privileged private conversation about me and you over in the hallway having a conversation. This was a group conversation that was ongoing, so to portray it as a private conversation that was overheard is factually incorrect. And, that's frustrating when there's information in this report, if it gets released, will give the public some comfort in how and what happened versus my word versus his word. But I can't let these statements stand in our community because the reality is, Brian, we know that women face this every day, and the many women face this kind of toxic workplace every day.
Well, a lot of women are men. Sorry.
Well, I'm saying women generally, because typically we'll figure it out, and they have to decide if they are willing to risk the personal, professional, and reputational risk that they have to go through to get here. And this is a prime example. So I brought this complaint forward, and now the conversation is about the $24,000 that was spent to do the investigation versus why do we need to spend the $24,000 to do the investigation. Walter Harding came on your show, and you were talking about Walter Harding, and Walter Harding's comments were, enough of this now, let's get on with and get back to work. That's very dismissive of a very serious issue. And then Dennis O'Keefe was on your show yesterday, and you asked him point blank, did this ever happen when you was mayor? No, it never happened when I was mayor. Incorrect. In 2013, when I rejoined council, the morale in City Hall, due to one senior bureaucrat, was toxic. While we tried to get Dennis to address it and deal with it, we talked about it in many meetings at council. Lack of action by the mayor did not deal with that individual or the individual problem. We got into March of 2014. 7 councillors got together on a Sunday night and decided they would not renew this person's contract in a private meeting coming up that Monday. And that was the action that had to be taken to sever that piece. Right after that, I think Tom Ann was one of the advocates for this when we started this, was we pushed to have the first code of conduct, conflict of interest done, and Clyde Wells came in and did that for us under Dennis Keefe as mayor, because we could not get any resolution. So for him to say it never happened under his watch is disingenuous and certainly either selective memory or short-term memory, because these are the pieces that, when we're talking about details about what's going on in our community, is very important. And, I understand the frustration of some of the general public, but when you see or get the information that's out there, there's an independent third party who interviewed 18 people and concluded that Councillor Davis breached sections 3.1 and 3.3 of respectful workplace by engaging in disrespectful behavior and code of conduct.
Yep.
So take it that there's something behind there that I wasn't me and you fighting over it. The other thing I find a little bit frustrating is some of his disingenuous comments around. He made a comment about the they would say the Edding poison workplace, and he kind of sloughed it off as saying, "Well, I made people feel uncomfortable." The part that he failed to mention in that part was the first line in that section that said, "A poison work environment is created when offensive comments are persistent or repeated." So he didn't say that when he talked about the poison work. He just kind of sloughed it off, right? So
understood.
Sloughing it off, I find really frustrating. And I was hopeful when council dealt with this on Tuesday. I was hopeful with his commentary then that we're moving forward. But all of a sudden, then all Newfoundland came out the next day.
Yep.
Information not aligning with what's in the report. He was on your show this Tuesday. Information not aligned with what's in the report. Then you got Walter Early and Dennis O'Keefe coming out. Men protecting men is what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to walk away from that. I'm not going to shy away from it. Any of us who have partners, equals, or loved ones, maybe we should ask West him the question that if you were in a toxic work environment, should the conversation be about the $24,000 spent, or should it be about why the $24,000 need to be spent?
Deputy Mayor Ellsworth, only because I'm 2 minutes past the news. Look, we can certainly continue this conversation. I got to get to the news, but look, I appreciate you, all the comments, all the clarity. Unfortunately, we have the redacted version. It's just full of black, and the problem and I appreciate your efforts that you're going to go to bat and try to get as much of that released. But this last week or so has been a total vacuum around this because of the redactions and because of the information that the public doesn't happen. And we know what's going to happen when the key points of this, such as the $24,000 that this report cost, are kept away from the public. Why not just release that right out of at the beginning? But as you said, it's not about the money.
Because we got provincial legislation that we need to follow. And Brian, I'll tell you this right now. I'll make this commitment right here.
Sure.
In the coming weeks, there will be enough information out in the coming weeks for people to understand what's happening. If that means I got to violate the code of conduct to make that happen, I will make that happen.
Okay, careful of suspension.
No,
not to make light, but
holiday or suspension, figure it out.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Ron Ellsworth, thanks for the time. I appreciate you coming on. Really do. Thank you.
Brian, take care.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Let's go right to line number 4, and the leader of the provincial NDP and the NDP MHA for St. John Centre. I was going to call you the president of the NLTA, but that was years ago. Jim Dinn.
I've been elevated. Thanks for having me on, Brian.
Thanks for making time.
I was driving back from the west coast of the island yesterday, and I got part of the conversation around the change in school times as it relates to the busing. And I do want to add my comments to this because I sat in the House when I heard petition after petition from the PCs on to bring in, to eliminate the 1.6 kilometer busing rule, and the Liberals brought it in. It was very much a political stunt, but in all of that. They never really, I looked at the impact on the school system, and I remember at that time thinking if I had that kind of money to put into the school system, I'd find other places that the school system is lacking and in need of supports. Anyway, that's beside that. But here we are. They brought the problem. They brought this in. And now I guess they're in the process. Well, we got to try to figure out how to pay for it, and and they've started the consultation process. But this is something that should have been done before they even, I guess, started making the promise and the commitment. And I guess the one thing that this reinforces for me is that whenever the promise is brought in, there's somewhere along the line you're going to find that it's going to be on the back of the education system itself, and this is yet another example. So we want to be more efficient. That's a way of cutting costs. So what's going to happen now is that we're going to have this sort of like the dual bus runs. I saw it when I was in my teaching career. I heard the Minister, I think, of Transportation Infrastructure talk about it's done elsewhere. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good thing, because it's about saving money as opposed to meeting the educational needs of the school system. They're two different things, but I find it truly frustrating that in making these promises, maybe they should have said this to parents beforehand. Here's what it's going to mean. But right now it means that schools are going to be, more schools are going to be trying to rework their schedules. It's going to, I think of the younger people who are going to be on the road early. I listened to one of your caller yesterday. They talked about maybe high school. Well, there are studies that show that high school students do better at the hours they from 9 to 3. But I would say any student would do better along that line. And what we're trying to do is find a justification for a decision that's budget based and not necessarily education based.
Yeah, there's a lot on this one. I'm wondering, have you had any conversations, been able to reach out to your brother and ask him and have any conversations with the Education Minister, Paul Dinn, about this?
Oh, not yet. I've had conversation with parents. Like my wife was a teacher. I've talked to the NLT on this one, but I know from my own experience that here, you look. Here's the reality for school for teachers who have to be on duty in the morning. It's going to present a significant challenge, especially if they need childcare. For parents, even for the things like when it comes to the, again talking to teachers, my wife included. Like when it came to planning field trips, it presented a significant problem. But of course, you're not going to hear those things because the school will make it work. But I'll draw your attention to two, what I see as a trend. I look at full-day kindergarten. Great idea when they brought it in, but how do they make it work? It was a zero-sum game they took from the system. So they introduced combined grades, and they increased class caps to get the 140 teachers, 143 right. kindergarten teachers that they needed. When it came to, and I look at the Carter Churchill case, very clear in that if you attend some of the testimony, that any conversation with the department was always a zero-sum game. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So if there was going to be no extra resources, and really that's what it should be, put the extra resources you need to make this work so that schools are not bearing the brunt of it. But in that testimony at the time, it was very clear that no, any of the conversations was, what can you take from the system now and repurpose? That is, to me, the wrong approach, because it's not based on education. It comes down to a budget-based decision, and then we're looking for an educational reason to back it up. It's just I would have preferred that if they, before anyone made the promise, introduced it or whatever else, that they probably should have consulted with teachers, with the schools, and had these answers beforehand. But now I guess they're stuck with both parties have more or less made the promise, and now they get to figure out how to pay for it. It's putting the cart before the horse. And I guess as a former teacher, and that I'm frustrated with it. It's the same approach in a lot of decisions. Is how do we make this work? What resources can we take to put to not new resources, but what can we take from the system to make it work? To make our promise work? And it's the school system, the students, the parents, and teachers are going to pay. Who are going to have to make the compromises to make it work. It's truly frustrating, Brian. I have to say, and to hear this. I said, yeah, here we go. I can remember me thinking back in 2023, listening to, I think when they made the decision and listening to the petitions, there are bigger problems in this system that need to be invested. So here's a question I will ask you, and I think in a sort of rhetorical question. What chances do we have then if they're going to find money, this is how they're going to try to save money, what chances do we have of even addressing the more serious issues of school violence, of class composition and class size? Because I can guarantee you that that unless they can find money within the system, we're never going to see changes. We're never, even with the early childhood educators, the same thing. Can't afford to deliver on the promises, so we're going to strike a committee to figure out what benefits they need first. This is a pure case, I guess, of budget-based decision making. And the school system and the education system, it doesn't work quite that way. And
that's the pushback I'm getting from a lot of parents and some teachers talking about, because Minister Pettin has talked about the savings. He equated it to $100,000 per bus per year. And then in total, looking at about $26 or $27 million in savings overall to implement some kind of changes here based on the results. And I guess you give them some kind of credit for, not some kind of credit, I mean credit is due for getting out in front of it. It's not for this school year. And it is a survey where they are asking the parents and asking for the feedback. I mean, we often, we'll give them that blowback for not doing that. So, in some senses, they're out in front of it. But overall, the blowback I'm getting is that this is about money before it's about the health and posture of kids and students and parents and working families.
But okay, I'm going to give them blowback, and I agree with what you just said. But shouldn't you have known, like getting out in front of it, shouldn't you have at least done, okay, when we're demanding this, what would be the potential cost to the system? Or were they just making promises and not and only after giving it the afterthought? Yeah, they got ahead of it, I guess, in a year in advance. But the fact is, they'd already committed to it. Now it's how do we deliver it? They really, before they even committed to this, they should have figured out, okay, what is this going to be cost? Is this the best use of the money? Is there another solution that doesn't impact the school? They never gave one thought to that, and that's on both parties. And it came down to an election promise. That's my that's the part that really galls me. I guess now they're trying to I guess making a virtue out of necessity, and there's no virtue here because it's the same thing. It's I've asked Mr. Penton about when it comes to rodent problems in the school. When he was the opposition, he very clearly we need to address this issue. I don't know if schools are going to see the necessary resources they need for that. But here in this one, they made promises. They put this forward as a necessity, and never once gave a thought, okay, what is this going to cost? I remember sitting in the House of Assembly, I'm thinking, gee whiz, this is going to cost, I think it was one estimate at the time, $30 million. So surely to God we can find there are other issues in the schools that need to be addressed first before you proceed. Yep. I knew that it was going to have complications, but you think somewhere along the line they should have thought of this before they made the promise, instead of making the promise. Now we got to figure, it's going to cost us a lot of money. Now we got to figure out what we're going to do to make it work. But in the process, it's going to be the schools that are going to be asked to make it work. And that's been the case that I guess when I was a teacher, when I was NLTA president, we've seen other examples of it. It's got to stop. I mean, use some forethought and some foresight when you're going out to make plans. But they put forward an uncosted platform, and I guess now their chickens have come home to roost, and they're trying to figure out how do we make these promises work. Anyway, that's my frustration with this.
Both governments have been accused of doing the same thing, having these great announcements without either costing or doing full analysis or halfway through tenders and going back to the Charlottetown and Steve Mill Crossing issues. Yep. Jim, I appreciate the time. Thanks a lot. Need this conversation. Hey, maybe they could consult a former NLTA president and 30-year teacher. I don't know, just a thought. Maybe your brother and you should got to get together for a coffee.
Don't worry. I'll be in contact with him after now that he knows where I stand publicly.
Yeah, I'm sure he had some idea at the beginning. Okay. Jim, thanks again. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Let's go to line number 3, and Ben Oates with the chair of Force NL. You're on the air.
Good morning, Brian. How are you this morning?
Oh, pretty good. It's been a busy, wild one with lots of info, or lack thereof if you choose. Ben, obviously, in light of Des Sullivan's call earlier in the show, which, is basically the mantra of this group now that they have formed, is to just scrap the MOU. Don't just pump the brakes, but move on. No rush here, no hurry. Let's take our time. Let's get it right. On the other hand, the Quebec Premier is saying there could be something by July around the Council of the Premiers meeting. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's lots. I have many thoughts, but there's lots of noise around this. There's lots of hullabaloo, and understandably so. I'm going to start by saying that, I'm going to give some respect and pay a little bit of credence to where Mr. Sullivan's come through. It's going to be no surprise to you that I pretty much completely disagree with everything he said and did, but let's go and basically try to get inside of his head for a moment, and his group's head. This is a generation, this is a set of the population that has been consecutively traumatized by every single hydroelectric negotiation/deal that Newfoundland and Labrador has ever signed since Confederation. This is a generation that grew up with the 69 contract, grew up through the multiple court challenges and saw it come of age, and they had their careers and they built it otherwise, right? So there's a deep-seated suspicion of Quebec and of hydroelectricity within that group. Mm-hmm. Mr. Sullivan was also diametrically opposed to Muskrat Falls for different reasons. Mm-hmm. The issue here for me is Mr. Sullivan wants to kill the MOU, and he says why. He says that Newfoundland's not getting its fair share. Well, not only did the 2024 MOU negotiated by the previous administration constitute a fair deal, the PC's government came in and said, yes, they came in and they set their negotiation goalposts. They want different things. They want power instead of revenue allocations. But overall, what the IRC has revealed is basically it debunked everything that Mr. Sullivan was saying. There is a fair deal to be had with Quebec. It was achieved in the 2024 MOU. A different fair deal can be achieved by the PC government. There is no alternative for developing the Gull Island and the entire Churchill River system. We need the power to develop the mines. The PC governments are pursuing that. I think that's actually logical. Credit to Minister Parrott and the Premier for changing their tune on it. All that and all he said, is we can't do another deal with Quebec. We can't give it away. We can't X, Y, Z. But there is immutable fact, immutable data showing that the valuation of the Churchill River is there. It's fair. And the only way that gets developed is with a major institutional partner that needs stable grid baseload power like Hydro-Quebec. Newfoundland and Labrador, and let me just jump a little bit here. Mr. Sullivan says we need to get more for our resources. That's a great whimsical little notion. We've gotten the most that we possibly ever will get out of that notion on our own. He was opposed to Muskrat Falls because we could not afford the finances. So then what is the alternative if we do not partner with Quebec on this deal? AI data centers are going to flop. The tech sector is sliding in the United States. We also, it's far too risky to go that route. The only partner for sustainable, equitable, profitable development of the Churchill River system is Hydro-Quebec. Nobody's saying that the 1969 agreement was fair. It was garbage. We all know that. The New Deal is set up, no matter if it's Liberal, PC, NDP, Green Party, Marijuana Party, will not sign a deal that puts us in the 69 situation again. So I just don't get it. Is it a fear of Quebec? Is it whimsical notions of what Newfoundland should be? Our group chooses to deal in reality. We need to get this bloody thing developed, and the only thing that gets developed is with Quebec.
It is what is the problem? The problem seems to be a lack of real certainty or understanding of what's in the MOU. We hear diametrically opposed opinions from learned people, such as yourself and such as Des Sullivan and the group that he represents. So that in alone puts all that trust and all that certainty and all the concern back into the lap of the public, right? When they hear two different people telling two different things about the same thing. Right?
Yeah, and that's half the issue here right now. Thank you for calling me learned. I depends who you ask, but my whole Force's whole group, all 30 plus of us, our only kind of idea is to recenter the conversation around tangible fact. And the tangible fact is that the technical professionals who developed this deal at Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, at the Newfoundland and Labrador government with JP Morgan Chase, in the PC government with the new IRC panel, they have all said the exact same thing. Yeah, the politicians are going to make noise. They're going to pot bang about it, whatever. But the immutable fact here is that everybody agrees, and I tip my hat to the new provincial government for saying so in their IRC report. The valuation established in the 2024 MOU is fair. It is the best that we are going to get because of the situation that we're in. 1. 2, the only way that project gets developed, Gull Island gets developed, the entire Churchill River system gets developed, is with Hydro-Quebec, because the minority shareholder, whether they're 40, 30, 20% minority shareholder, they're going to, quote, lose money on it. It's a very complex thing, as you know. Mm-hmm. And 3, we can't do it on our own. We tried that with Muskrat Falls. That's now my generation is going to be absolutely saddled. My generation, my kids' generation, if I'm lucky enough to have kids and grandkids, they're all going to be paying that debt. So the question is, why are they opposed to it? Why? Is it a fear of Quebec? Is it based on? I can't wrap my head around it. Again, I started this by saying I get why people are so skittish about it. I do. I understand. It's fine to have a healthy suspicion of Quebec, sure, but we can't not do this. and a perfect shining example of this. There's many reasons why we should do this, but I'm going to point out one that's in the news cycle today. Is that the credit rating of the province the credit outlook of the province got downgraded today, which basically means that there is a very real risk. It's basically a flashing warning sign saying, get your house in order, either increase revenues or cut spending in order to stabilize your thing. And, if nobody likes where we are right now, we're really not going to like where we are if our credit rating gets downgraded, because then everything gets more expensive, and then it goes on the backs of the most vulnerable. And nobody wants that. The easy solution here, get this project going, get the associated economic development going, just get the revenues flowing. And I don't get why. I can't square that circle. It might be fine for Des Sullivan's generation. It ain't fine for mine.
It comes down to mistrust and politics, both the history of this province. There doesn't seem to be another explanation. And when you say this is the best deal we can get, how do we know that? I mean, how does the average Joe know that? And can we really answer that? Can that question really be put to the public?
I mean, a referendum is another conversation. I could call in for an hour about that, but I won't take up too much of your time. No, and I don't think that responsibility should be transferred onto the public, because everybody is busy trying to make a living, myself included, right? Why should we go out of our way and become experts on utility negotiations? I think that should be we should leave this, and the way the government's done the right thing by handing the keys back to a professional negotiating team, leave it in the hands of the people that have made a career, that do this for a living, and then put the decision to our lawmakers who, it's easier to educate 40 MHAs to make a decision on a massively complex thing than it is to educate 500,000. Ben,
is it okay to put it in the hands of people who have been there before during Muskrat, like a Jerome Kennedy, like a Julia Mullally?
In my opinion, I hope that these individuals take what they learned from the failure of the Muskrat Falls project and put it towards getting a good deal for Newfoundland and Labrador. I sincerely hope that, because we can go back and forth with the political appointments aspect of putting Jerome Kennedy in there and Julia Mullally and yada, yada, yada. These people are not, like you said, they're learned. They know what they're talking about. I hope, my earnest hope, is that they use the experience of having Muskrat Falls fail on them to inform the negotiation of a better deal for Newfoundland and Labrador, a good deal for Newfoundland and Labrador. And if worse comes to worse, they can always default back to the 2024 MOU, which in our opinion was also a fair deal. So they get it. I'm not going to be here and to sow mistrust in the current team. People of the province spoke, and that's what we got to roll with. But we need to get this deal done, and I have confidence in Premier Wakeham's government to do so now. I didn't for a long time because we didn't know what the hell they were doing, but we need to get this across the line, and I'm glad they're sticking to reality. And it's frustrating to see the same old cats coming out of the woodworks trying to poke holes on it.
I'll let you go on this. Just a last little wrap-up question. The wild card for me continues to be Ottawa right now, with all the talk about east-west grids, doubling electricity output by 2050. Clearly, they see this as a bookend possibly to another part of the country for hydroelectric. They're involved somehow. Just no clarity on what exactly might be on the table from Ottawa. As I said earlier, whether it's financial incentives to get projects built, or whether it's some kind of broker or negotiator or mediator to try to bring Newfoundland and Labrador together with Quebec and remove some of that distrust from the history of the thing. And then the other part, of course, is I was at the news conference with the Premier, with NL Hydro and Michael Sabia, the former CEO of Hydro-Quebec, there a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, down at the Alt Hotel. Of course, 3 days later, he left and became the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. And so he's in his corner, he's in his office. Do you trust the Prime Minister to ensure that that there is a fair deal brokered here?
The Prime Minister is going to act in the best interests of the country, and
or not.
Believe that this,
if it's politics, that's the concern, right?
I like Mark Carney because he's not a career politician. Let's start there. I'll say I think he will. I think it's in the country's best interest. But considering what we're facing from down south, such a project like Gull Island, a nation-building project, would be insulating from the whims of the orange fella down south. They have an interest in getting this done because it's good for Newfoundland and Labrador, and I do believe Mark Carney will treat Newfoundland and Labrador as an equal member of the Confederation, as any prime minister should. I mean, in the past, we could go on about how some prime ministers favor Quebec, some prime ministers favor Alberta. Newfoundland and Labrador always kind of gets left to pick up the scraps. I don't think this is going to happen with this prime minister. As in terms of what role they're playing, we don't know, and we're likely not going to know, because if we did know, then Hydro-Quebec would know, and the general public would know, and then we might lose some commercial advantage. So, in my opinion, the best thing that they could do is play a mediator role, set the table for us to come and negotiate. Financial incentives do carry a risk of making alternatives for Quebec cheaper. That strands the asset up in Labrador. We don't know what kind of role they're playing. I think he will act in the best interests of the country. But again, lots of signals have been set on all sides. Now it's about tangibility. Get to work. That's on the Fed side, it's on the Quebec side, it's on the Newfoundland and Labrador government side. All the signals are there. The signals weren't for a while. The signals are there now. Let's see if they can convert it into a deal. I have confidence in them. I say sound the starting gun. Let's go.
Great place to leave it. Thanks, Ben. Ben Oates with Force NL. Thanks a lot for making time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Take care.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Let's go right to line number one. Emma Craig, the regional librarian located in St. John's for the NL Public Libraries. You're on the air.
Hi, nice to talk to you today.
You as well. So, Michael Donovan's moving. Well, at least the library is.
Yes, so our Michael Donovan Library, which is currently located in the Waterford Valley Mall, will be moving from its location at the end of this month, although our last day open to the public will be this Saturday, June 13th.
Yeah, and you're having a few events there. Can you just remind me, so Michael Donovan, we say these things sometimes to just riddle off the title of a building or a location, but he was a former director, right, of libraries for the province, was he not, or for the Newfoundland Library Board?
You're correct, Brian. So actually, Richard Michael Donovan was his full name, but Michael Donovan, he was our former director of Newfoundland and Labrador Public Libraries. Yeah. He did a lot of work in St. John specifically, so it was decided about 30 years ago when the first Michael Donovan Library opened that they would name the library branch after him, which is where we get the name from.
And this is going to be an honestly unknown question. Is Richard Michael Donovan, when did he not be with us anymore, or is he with us?
He's no longer with us. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact date, but his family is still around. We actually had a wonderful visit by his daughters last summer where they came and visited the library branch. So the family is still aware of his legacy here in St. John's. Yeah, I didn't want to not mention that. We just talk about the titles all the time. But that's great to hear that he had relations there as well. So what's the plan for Saturday? So the plan is very loose, very casual. So we are inviting people to come stop in, see the library before we close up for moving. I have been informed that there will be cake and refreshments that are going to be served around 2 p.m., but mostly we're just inviting people, like if they haven't had the chance yet, to come and say goodbye to the old location as we get prepped for heading to a new place very soon, hopefully. And no hints on that. Do we have it narrowed down? Is there a short list? Not that we're ready to tell the public yet. I am allowed to tell people that we are going to tender for a new place, so we're hoping that, but again, because we're part of the government of Newfoundland, we will go through the procurement process, go through tender, and hopefully, you know how those processes can take, but we're hoping we are focused on reopening in a location in the West End. Well, I'll miss picking up a book and my chess is at the same time. I can't confirm whether we'll be by chesses again, but wishful thinking. Absolutely. Look, I wish you nothing but the best, Emma. Thanks for making time for the program today. It's good to see. I know a few people said, "Oh, look, they're closing another library." Well, that was the initial thought by a lot of people, just because there's a segment of society that doesn't believe there's any use for them. But boy, is that ever not the case, especially with technology these days and the different services that a library offers, as opposed to just coming in and taking out a book. Of course, and like the joke I've been making a lot lately is nothing scares Newfoundlanders more than the idea of a library closing. So we're trying our best to make sure people know this isn't a closure, this isn't goodbye, it's just good night for now while we try to set up a new location. And we invite people to check out other library branches in the city. A lot of the Michael Donovan people will be headed to the AC Hunter, we're pretty sure, but we have other library branches very close by that people can make use of, especially with all the cool library programs going on this summer.
AC Hunter, of course, being at the Arts and Culture Center. Anything you want to plug just for the summer programs that you have, or is it anything else? I'll just give you that last opportunity here.
Of course. Well, the big thing we always plug every summer is our summer reading club that we do for the kids. So once school is out, we encourage families to check out their local library and sign up their kids for the club, trying to get kids reading all throughout the summer. That being said, tons of adult programming going on too. At the AC Hunter specifically, we actually have some really cool programming going on for St. John's Pride Week related to a certain gay hockey show that's blown up online lately. So definitely encourage people to check out their local library and see what we've got going on this summer.
Yeah, that would be the heated rivalry. There you go. Heated libraries. There's a thought. Anyway, move. I got a thumbs up from Dave on that one. Okay, well, listen, that will get him into the doors. Okay, so Emma, Craig, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Good luck on Saturday. And by all means, when you get the locale on the new location, let me know.
Oh, yes. I've been trying to be very clear with people that as soon as we know something, everyone else will know something. We're not keeping it hidden.
Perfect. Excellent. Good to hear. Thanks again for your time, and onward and upward for the Michael Donovan Public Library.
I agree. Totally true.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
This is the best of VOCM Open Line.
Let's go to line number 2, and Stan, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Brian, I'm a senior. I've been buying my cod fillets for years and years on Petty Harbour. You can't go to the supermarket, but that's $10 a pound there.
Or more.
And, so it tells me you can get a permit from the fisheries that someone can catch the 5 cod for you.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I thought you were talking about salmon or trout, but you're talking about the cod fishery.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm on the phone half the morning trying to get a number to call someone, see where I can get a permit, if you can get a permit, whatever's on the go. And all I do is getting numbers. That's no good to me. They're talking about angling on the river and a website there a mile long that you can call and all that stuff. I mean, all I want to do is this guy that calls in all the time about the fishery and that, I know his name. If I knew his number, I'd call him because I get all the information I want. But anyway, what do I do? I mean, I can't get on a boat. I don't have a boat, and I'm a senior, and I'm kind of handicapped to a certain degree.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm trying to get a bit of codfish, and I want to do it legally. And they said you can get a permit. So if I can get a permit and pass it on to someone, they can catch 5 cod for me. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, sure. So look, I can give you a number.
Satisfaction. I don't know who to call.
I can give you a number, and I can give you an email. Specifically for seniors, I don't have it right at my fingertips, but I do know the number and an email that, I don't want to give you anything erroneous. And it may have changed.
Email very much. We're seniors. We don't bother that stuff at all, right?
Yeah.
We use the phone only, right?
Try 709. And this is for inquiries regarding the recreational ground fishery. So if nothing else, if they don't have the information, and they should be able to give you, or at least provide you with the number or the people who do, because it is the same, it's DFO for the NL region. So 709-772-4423.
4423.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll try it. But like I said, it shouldn't be that much of an effort to get a little bit of satisfaction like that, eh?
It shouldn't. And I know the changes that were recently made, some changes, not enough for a lot of people, as we know, when it comes to the West and South Coast, because they're still restricted to 3 days as opposed to the 7, right? But seniors, I'm pretty sure can still get they have the daily limit of 5 ground fish per person with no maximum boat limits. That's what I understand.
I mean, I got a friend, they can catch 5 fish for me and my wife if we get a permit legally. I want to do it legally. I don't want to get nobody in trouble. but it seems like it's more of a hassle than anything.
Yeah. So I'm just being also noted that any Department of Fisheries office should have, the forms available for this sort of thing. But that number might be your first stop. And look, just give Dave a call back if you don't get anywhere with that one to let us know if it's a good number, if it'll get you somewhere. Because I'm sure there are other people listening, nodding along to your conundrum.
Yeah, this gentleman that phones in all the time. I don't know his name, but
probably Barry Fordham. Is it maybe regarding the food fishery
Fordham or something?
Yeah, if it's regarding the food fishery, it's probably Barry Fordham.
He's always calling in there. He knows everything about everything.
That's not easy these days.
But anyway, that's all I wanted to find out there. And look, before I go, Brian, this guy Davis, when he used to call in the Paddy show before he got elected to council, I said to my wife, this guy knows everything about everybody and everything. He should run for politics. Sure enough, he runs, gets elected. Now, where he got a suspension there for a month with pay, I said, geez, I wouldn't mind having a job like that. Just suspended for a month. Month's holidays with pay, but now he's after donating the money. But he's a businessman; he can donate the money. His salary. But if you're going to suspend me for a month, try to laugh at that. Give me a month's pay, and I can go anywhere I want to for a month.
Except the reason that he has the suspension and the pay, which he is donating, which Councillor Davis has said he is donating to the Real program within the city, just to be noted. I'm not sure I'd want to be caught up in what he's caught up in, though, to be...
Oh, I know.
But I hear what you're saying.
Now, very shortly, with the ex-mayor, he's going to phone in. Doc is going to phone in about what the other guy was just saying, the deputy mayor was saying.
And he should. When you're referenced by somebody else, that you said something and then somebody else said something. I mean, we'll give everybody the time of day, anyone who wants to. And we have a lot of defenders in the email realm and all the rest of it. They're big and ugly enough to defend themselves. I mean that in a colloquial way. Yeah. But
I like what the deputy mayor said. He's willing to go and bring this out to the public, and if you got to take a suspension, he will.
Yeah,
he's got a bit of guts too, right?
Yeah, although I hope that doesn't really come to that, because then we're probably spending another quarter of like $25,000 on another investigation.
Yes, that's silly, that is right.
So I mean, those things, look, they're important. I'm not belittling in any way the discussions around workplace, toxicity and harassment and just nuisances in the workplace that just cause more stress and anxiety than you already probably have on the go at home. So if we could just all get along. And be
my first time calling you since you got the job, I called Paddy several times. Told Paddy, don't ever quit and go into politics. I said, you can do more good at the job you're doing. But he fooled me. He went into politics.
Well, it's a nonpartisan...
You're as good as anybody ever been on there. And better than a lot that's been on there.
Well, we all...
I don't your head very much, but that's true. You're as good as anybody ever been on there.
And I'm just getting started. Look out once I get my teeth into it. But no, I appreciate...
You're in that type of work for many, many years, and you seem to know everything that we need to know. You're passing on to us.
Well, I appreciate it. Look, again, you have to kind of know a little bit about everything, really, if you're going to be a journalist in any jurisdiction. You should be up on it. And back in the day, we had beats, like someone would be the justice reporter or someone would be the education reporter, and you never really got a taste of, say, business reporting, which you really should have a little bit under your belt. I remember doing, like, boring, I thought it was, just having to put the gold, the price of gold in the stocks page years ago when it was like $400 or $700 an ounce, and now it's close to...
I remember many, many years ago, Jeff Sterling told people here in Newfoundland, buy gold.
Yeah.
We had to buy gold when he was talking about it. We'd be all rich now.
Yeah, it's a good alternative commodity for people today, absolutely. Stan, look, I appreciate that. Make sure you let me know if you do have any luck with that number.
I'll try, my friend. Thanks a lot. You keep up the good job.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. All your callers and emailers and everyone else who has contributed. Thank you to David Williams right there, who, man, busy man today as we all were. Let's get off to the news. Drive safely. Arrive alive. VOCM cares.